All right, good morning, Compass Roanoke. Welcome to the 11:30 a.m. service on race weekend. I will do my best to get you out of here before the races start. But it is my final weekend if you don't know, so no guarantee. I may just talk and talk and talk. We'll see. And if you don't know, I'll explain that more here in just a little bit, but I'm super excited that you are here with us today. If you are a new guest with us, thank you for showing up on my last day. I really appreciate that. But I am glad you're here. We've got a fantastic campus. I'm going to give you some encouragement at the end of service today. If you're checking in on Facebook Live, want to say welcome to you as well. So let me jump in. We're going to finish up this series. Then I'm going to share a few parting words with you. And then some of us are going to go have cupcakes. So that's where we're headed in the next few minutes. But hey, first, let me wrap up our series. So we've been talking about how Jesus calls us to have a reasonable and a verifiable faith, right? We've called the series a forensic faith. So not a blind faith, not an unreasonable faith, but a forensic faith in a person and an event in Jesus Christ and the resurrection. And we said if you can dismiss the resurrection, then you shouldn't be here. But if it's true, that changes everything for all of us. And so we believe you don't have to check your brain at the door to be a person of faith, that we can do the math and add up and see the evidence does make sense. And we said starting out, we want you to know why you believe what it is you believe. And for sure, here's what I know, that there are people that get derailed, right? They get knocked off the tracks in their journey of faith because someone has said, well, your faith is foolish, or it's fairy tale, myth, fable, or just flat out false. And they buy in to that narrative rather than doing the homework to realize we do have a verifiable faith, good reason for the evidence that we have for what we believe. And listen, you may choose not to believe. You may look at the evidence and opt out, but don't ever hit the eject button because you think it lacks strong support and evidence. In fact, in the book, Forensic Faith by J. Warner Wallace, he starts off talking about a letter he received from a college student that started at a secular university and not even studying world religions or philosophy, things like that, but he was like in economics or engineering, but still being tested and challenged and, maybe even ridiculed for his faith, and talked about how a lot of people, just because they don't have a foundation, aren't able to stand up to those criticisms and sometimes give way. We want you to have a good confidence for the belief that we have. So that's what this series has been about. Peter writes this in his letter, 1 Peter chapter 3. He says, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always, 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 every time be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have. So why is it that you believe? But, and here's the catch, do it with gentleness and respect. That's important. If someone goes, do you seriously believe in all this stuff? You're like, I do believe in it. And they say, well, that's dumb. You shouldn't be like, well, you're dumb, right? That's not our approach. No, he says, have good reason, right? Be able to give an answer for the hope that you have with gentleness and with respect. And keep in mind, right? There will, and even if the person's not nice, because there will always be someone who will challenge you, no matter what you believe, right? Whatever side of the argument, of the issue you land on, either way, someone's going to disagree, right? Someone's going to think different, not understand you, have strong opinion otherwise. So we need to be ready. And we talked about this last week. Train yourself to be able to give an answer. And I want you to have what we would call humble confidence. I think you should be confident. I think you should also be very humble. Christ was humble. We're called to reflect him well. So a humble confidence, you should be respectful, and you can have strong conviction within that. So this is how we're called to navigate it. Let me give you some insight from a survey that I just listened to recently. This poll that was conducted, focused in on, or talked to a focus group. So they polled like almost 1 million people, especially from unchurched areas around the country, highly unchurched, post-church, de-churched people. And then they talked with a focus group to get some of their opinions and some of their views around Christians and Christianity, which I found very fascinating and interesting, and I want you to hear some of it because there were some very stifling and very unflattering stereotypes, which you can't imagine. But here's what was interesting. Some of the people, right, in this focus group, and a good number of the people had actually not ever met a Christian. So the survey revealed that 1 in 5 people, if you can imagine now in our culture, 1 in 5, 20% had never met a Christian, did not know someone who would consider themselves to be a Christ follower. as well. Many of them had never had a church experience, right? No idea, no connection with a church experience as well. So you can picture that they would in many ways view Christians the way some other people view, others from another country, someone that they've never even met, which you can get very inaccurate or overarching stereotypes when you do that. So for instance, my mom and my oldest daughter, we were in Sydney, Australia this time last year. So we did the trip there, hung out. On our final day, we took an Uber from the VRBO back to the airport. And so we're driving 25, 30 minutes back to the airport. I'm sitting up front with the driver having conversation. So a guy who grew up in Australia, mostly in Sydney, has only been there, which was interesting because he was like Asian descent and he was really cool looking, but had the Australian accent. So we're talking, and so then I tell him, our family is here visiting from Texas, right? The US and Texas. And no joke, he looks at me and he says, really, does everybody own a gun and ride a horse? Right? Like for real, that was his question. So we all wear white hats and have 6-shooters and cry hi-ho silver as we ride our white steed into work. So I'm like, bro, it's 2020, right? Like how many Westerns have you watched? I'm not sure. Okay, yes, probably that happens here for sure, but it's not necessarily a complete or common representation. So you get with some of the focus group, maybe not a complete or correct representation. Here's some other things. Some people think this, that as a general rule, right, as they talk to these focus groups, that Christians have no education, right? So they're surprised and shocked that we can even read, is what that means. Maybe they come from really bad religious parenting. Maybe they come from a hyper-fundamental upbringing if they did spend some time in the church, which was harsh, dogmatic, rules, laws, rather than grace and love, so which is sad because one of the primary characteristics of Christ in the Bible is compassion. As well, a lot of them, when they think of Christians and Christianity, here's some groups and things they associate Christians with, right? They see these simultaneously. Number one, they saw Christians associated with Jehovah's Witnesses. That's not our team, in case you don't know. They believe a few different things. Listen, Hinduism and Buddhism, which major world religions, but also very different religions. One really doesn't believe in a God, you just ascend to nothingness. The other believes in lots of gods, including cows. We're not that team either. Wicca, what? Like that's witchcraft. We're not hanging out doing prayer meetings with Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right? Like that's also not us. Some of them believe that Mormons are Christian evangelicals on the bikes, all right? So again, not our team. But I just want you to see, again, lots of people that don't really know even who a Christian is or no real interaction except for, stereotypes they see on television, probably a bad stereotype, or bad press they may have received from unfavorable media outlets. So we should not be surprised, right? When there's misconceptions around our faith and what we believe. Because again, a lot of people have no church experience, don't really know what a sincere follower of Christ might look like, maybe have never even met one, to which I would say we shouldn't become defensive or blame them or be upset. Befriend them if you get the chance. Talk to them, have a conversation, maybe help break some of the stereotypes and be ready to give an answer with gentleness and respect. That is the challenge of this series. That's what we want for you and for all of us. So with our time, here's what I want to do. I want us to answer a couple of questions and challenges maybe around this issue. A couple faith challenges I will give you. I won't have time to hit as many as I would like to, and some challenges and questions we pulled from the book. Pastor Drew does a fantastic job at covering a few more, and I would encourage you go online to the Colleyville campus after the sermon comes out this week and listen to maybe some more of those if you're interested, because I want to say some special things on the end just for you guys, but we will deal with a couple. So let's start with faith challenge number one. That is this: faith, right? Faith, what we do here, is incompatible with reason, intellect. Think about this. So we've touched on this the entire series, right? We want you to think about this, but here's what will happen. Oftentimes, skeptics, non-believers will argue that faith and reason are like the opposite, right? They're diametrically opposed. They don't go together. And then they're really smooth. They position themselves as the only reasonable people in the argument and in the debate or in the discussion, which is a false move and a false argument, but that's how they like to frame it up. And we've said through the entire series, Jesus never asked for anybody to abandon reason in order to be a believer. In fact, he encourages us, challenges us, go do the research, check the questions, test your faith. We read this in the book of Acts about Paul in Acts 17. We're told there, as was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days, he reasoned with them from the scriptures, and then watch, explaining, proving that the Messiah had to suffer and then rise from the dead. We also read this back in the beginning of Acts chapter 1, about Jesus and his resurrection, where we're told this, after his suffering, after the crucifixion, he presented himself to them and gave, watch, many convincing proofs that he was alive. So again, evidence, we want people to be thinkers. And speaking of reasonable, right? Faith and reason, can they go together? Speaking of reasonable, so I told you in week 2 when we talked about, these case makers for Christ, we went through different case makers, including the eyewitnesses. And the eyewitnesses being not people that came decades or hundreds of years later and maybe heard a compelling story and bought into it. The guys that were there, either they saw it or they didn't see it. So I find them to be some of the most compelling evidence and witnesses for it. And I want to give you some more reason that I think they are credible. So let me share this as we kind of wrap up this series. If you believe the disciples, right, the eyewitnesses of the resurrection, if you believe they lied and they made the entire story up, fabricated it about the resurrection, then you have to answer the question of motive, right? So motive has to be something we consider. So meaning when you and I tell a lie, when you make up a story, you fabricate something, we tend to do it in a way to protect ourselves, right? To get something we want out of the deal. And it's always to our personal advantage, correct? This is why online dating is incredibly popular, because you can Photoshop yourself and say whatever it is you want to say, right? So guys are like, I am handsome and I am charming. You're like, nope, you are furry like a Wookiee and weird, right? But you don't say those things, right? You don't put that on the bio in your dating app because you won't get the cute girl. So rather you're like, well, I am manly, right? And I'm a food connoisseur, which again, just means you have a hairy back and you like to eat, right? That's all that means. But we frame it up really well. Women, you do similar things, do you not? Like, I am emotionally secure and I'm outdoorsy, which just means you're seeing a therapist and you don't shave, right? Whatever. We put in our bio things that sound really good, and we fudge or we lie or we make stuff up as a general rule to get more fame, or more popularity, or more money, or more friends, or more success, or more power, or more whatever, more of whatever you want to get more of. We do not tend to tell lies that get us more beat up and broke and killed, right? Like most people that I know of do not lie for that reason. Like no one's going, I'm a serial killer and posting that on social media if you're not, so that you get arrested in trouble. We tend to tell lies that benefit ourselves, correct? So then again, which brings us back to, if you're going to say that they lied, right? The guys that were with him saw it. If you're going to say they lied and made the whole thing up, then again, you have to answer the question as to what purpose, right? For what? What do they get out of it? Because again, these aren't guys hearing about it years later and a compelling argument. They were there. What do they get? More money? Nope. More political influence? Nope. Success, power, fame, any of those? No. What do they get? They get murdered, right? Like we do not usually tell lies that would get us murdered. Maybe you tell lies to get cowboy tickets, if that's what your team, or backstage passes to your favorite concert, not murdered. And listen, I'm giving you an example, not encouraging you to lie so you get stuff you want. I'm just telling you that's how lies tend to work, correct? Additionally, when you think about it, I think they're liars, you have to take the character of the disciples into account, because these are guys feeding the homeless and the hungry, right? Caring for orphans and for widows, like Mother Teresa type people. They are serving and loving and welcoming broke and hurting people. So these are guys of incredibly high moral character. So that are leaving comfortable lifestyles and leaving secure jobs to go and live impoverished lifestyles in order to serve others. These are the kind of guys and the kind of moral character we're talking about as well. If you're gonna say and believe that they totally fabricated and made the lie up, do you really believe that all of them would hold the line, man, and hold to the lie, to the end, to the point of being tortured and murdered? Because, right, 11 of the 12 disciples, 11 of the 12 are killed for telling people that the resurrection of Jesus was in fact true. 11 of them. One of the disciples actually was not killed. Do you know who that was? John. John, the beloved disciple, wrote Revelation, the brother of James. He was exiled to the island of Patmos. That's what he got done after being boiled alive. Which then I would ask you, how many of you, the moment they drop you into the deep fat fryer, you're crying uncle, right? You're like, totally a lie. I am swimming in a deep fat fryer. I was making up the entire resurrection thing. That is not true. So John gets boiled alive. The other 11, they get tortured and they suffer greatly. To which I'll keep asking, how many of you, as you're being tortured and killed, as you're frying in a vat of oil, would at that point come clean if you had in fact been making up a lie and telling a story? So you get like there's lots of pressure on these guys to recant, right? Lots of pressure to change their story, probably even the offer of great reward because they want them to stop saying this. If they'll just recant, and yet not one of them, none of them recant and change their story. Everybody holds firm to that story, even as they're being picked off and taken out one by one by one. And if they just recant, right? If they just change the story, it makes life so much easier. They probably release them and leave them alone. But all of them across the board say, listen, no, we saw Jesus dead, crucified dead. We saw him alive, resurrected out of the tomb. And listen, you can torture and murder us, but it doesn't change the truth of what it is we saw. And listen, you really can't intimidate or scare us with the threat of death because Jesus conquered it, right? And if you kill us, then we just go to be with him. But I want you to see as reasonable, and when, J. Warner Wallace, Cold Case Detective, you look at motive and you look at these things and we find that very compelling and reasonable. And we could do more, but let me keep on moving and bring you to the next faith challenge. Faith challenge number 2 I want us to hit on. Christians, as a general rule, are often labeled as intolerant and narrow. So, okay, intolerant and narrow. So let's talk about this because I find this to be a very interesting and slippery topic and conversation. And think about this as well. To just say that Christians are intolerant and narrow, okay, then you're being a little bit black and white and slightly intolerant yourself, right? Because you're making an absolute claim, right? Are you absolutely sure that we are absolutely wrong? Yes. All right. Well, if you're sober, there's a little hypocrisy there, right? So I get it's a slippery, messy, complicated conversation, often an intense conversation. Let's talk about it because I find it interesting dialogue. So let me start with this. Let's talk about tolerance, that whole idea of tolerance. And again, I want you to be thinkers. And I want to give you a definition for tolerance as it has been understood, at least historically or in the past, and then how it's changed. So first, a definition from the dictionary. Here's how the word tolerance is defined there. Tolerance is this: fair, objective, permissive attitude toward those whose opinions, practices, race, religion, nationality, what's the word here? Differ. Who differ, so permissible attitude towards those who differ from one's own. So picture it like this. It's kind of an approach, if you're a math person, to like math. So the assumption is there's one right answer, and then there's lots of incorrect answers. And if you and I disagree, we can't both be right. So maybe you're right and I need to change. Maybe I'm right and you need to change. Maybe, perhaps we're both wrong and we both need to change. But here's the really good news. We tolerate one another. We put up with each other and we have dialogue. Now, we assume the other's probably wrong, right? That's my assumption. However, we discuss it and we disagree graciously, cordially, or at least we should. So that would be what I will define as old, right? That is the old tolerance that some of us grew up with, have been around. We've kind of redefined it in our culture, have we not? So it kind of takes on a different context and meaning. So here's how I will define a new tolerance in our culture. It basically says this: I'm right, you're right. I celebrate you, you celebrate me. You have your truth, I have my truth. I won't question yours and you will not question mine. All right, so you see the shift from, I don't think you're right, I disagree, but I'm gonna put up with you and we're gonna hash it out. Again, hopefully cordially and graciously. Two, we're both right. There is no opposition, no potential for either of us to be wrong, and to suggest otherwise means that you are very intolerant. Right? Which, again, big thinker, if you push that to its logical conclusion, is that not itself somewhat unreasonable? Right? Like if the atheist says, or the unbeliever, there is no God. And then religions, our faith would say, there is a God. Okay, well, they can't both be right, correct? They can both be polite, and they should be. You can't both be right. Like if I tell you that there's a jet out in the fountain outside the building right now, okay, well, either you walk out there and there is a jet or there's not a jet, right? It's not simultaneously true and false. Either it is or it isn't. And you understand this as well, that all of us, everyone, whatever you believe on faith, not faith, everybody is intolerant and discriminates at some point and some level. Do we not? Come on, we all do. We just pick and choose how. So think about this. Ask the guy that wants to smoke on the airplane, who's going, I feel like the other flyers on my plane are being a little bit too narrow and discriminating against me, right? And most people would say, agree to disagree, right? Light up before you load up, Jack, because you're not smoking on the plane. Well, I feel like you're being narrow. Okay. You would tell the pilot that's drunk, you can't fly this plane today. No one's going, I feel like you guys are being a little too narrow and intolerant with him, right? He wants to fly the friendly skies and make it fun. I think you should loosen up. True? So again, just think about these things. None of us, we don't live on islands to ourselves, right? So you have your own truth, I have my own truth. Okay, at some point, our lives are going to intersect and potentially create some problems with that. And I would argue that a new tolerance doesn't really help us navigate those, right? It's going to lead to some major problems that we're going to struggle with. And we should not be surprised when we get these kind of challenges. Like, you shouldn't be shocked by this. We read all the way back in the New Testament, the first century, Paul told us in 2 Timothy 4, a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires. They will look for teachers who will tell them whatever it is their itching ears want to hear. Like, just say whatever as long as it makes me feel good. They will reject the truth and they will chase after myths. Which, think about this when it comes to intolerance. Again, we'll just keep talking. I want to help peel back some layers and help you think. So most people, right? Most people would believe this, that the narrowness, let's go with it, narrowness of Christianity is exclusive and intolerant. Which I say, is that true? Is the narrowness exclusive and intolerant? And Jesus himself, he did say this, right? In John 14:6, well-known verse, talking about himself as the Savior, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So okay, yes, Jesus makes a very exclusive claim there, right? That if you don't have him, you don't have the all-access pass, essentially. And there are a lot of people in our culture that are very put off and put out by the narrowness of his statement there, right? Identifying himself as exclusively the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus will make basically the same statement or use similar imagery in Matthew 7, where he says, you can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. And again, talking about himself, the narrow gate, the highway to hell is broad and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. But the gateway to life is very narrow and the road is difficult and only a few ever find it. To which, maybe that verse in itself makes some of you nervous, right? Where there are some spaces deep down in your soul where you wonder, is God being a little too narrow-minded here? To which I would say, Sometimes it's because we don't understand the father heart of God, that his goal is getting as many of his kids in as possible, not keeping them out. And we see this at creation where he creates a beautiful garden. And then when we sin, he pursues us and creates a sacrificial system. And then we blow it. He sends Jesus to die. He's always trying to get us back to him. But if you're on like a mountaintop on an island and there's multiple paths down off that island, and some of them look really fun and really beautiful and really cool, but only one leads to safety and others lead to harm or death or being trapped, well, it's not loving to tell you you're free to go whatever. The narrow one that gets you off is the most loving thing, even if it may not seem like that to you. So again, let's talk about this idea of narrowness even. Think about this. If narrow, right? Just consider, if narrow is so bad, then why do we use it as a guide for so much of our living? Do we not? Think, if narrow is bad, why do we use it in so many ways for our lives? And is this not true? How many of you've traveled to another country and driven in that country, especially a third world country or an undeveloped country? Where like they just have a big road, man, and no markings or lines for the different lanes. And it's just a free-for-all, right? People are coming, it's crazy. That's a terrifying experience if you have ever been on one of those. And so you're really glad that we mark lines on our highways and we narrow the space you're allowed to operate in, correct? And it's not just every man for himself. Good luck, hope you don't get hit by the tank, right? When you take a new job, like in a new company, new industry, you're fresh out of college, whatever, how many of you like it when they give you a job description that says, hey, here on the paper, here's the things you need to do. These are your roles and responsibilities, what you can do, what we don't need you to do, rather than, whatever, just show up and do what you feel like. New company, maybe you don't even know the industry. That is stressful. It benefits no one. So a few weeks ago, my dad had surgery for tumors on his brain. The surgeon does not sit my parents down previous to having that surgery and go, hey, we're just gonna crack him open and go in there and cut some stuff. Hopefully we get the tumor and, don't cut out anything important. Right? No one's going, great idea, doctor, thanks for that. No, we want, right? You want them to narrow the approach. We want you to be very, very precise on that. Hear me on this. Freedom is not living without terms or borders or boundaries or some guardrails. Guardrails are good. Guardrails are healthy and beneficial. Parents get this with their kids. God gets this with us. Good. Timothy Keller, he gives an example in his book, Search for a Reason for God in an Age of Skepticism. So he talks about if you take a fish, all right? For those of you that are fishers, if you take a fish out of water, because fish get their oxygen from the water, right? Not from the air like you and I do. If someone comes and grabs, right? Because they're very tolerant and inclusive, if they come and grab the fish out of the water, put him on the dock or put him on the shore and go, hey, go be free, little buddy. You should not ever be restricted to just water. People are being so intolerant and so narrow with you. I feel like you should just be free to do whatever you want. Okay, you do understand that by expanding the narrowness of his surroundings, you haven't given him greater freedom, right? You have given him a death sentence. So narrow is not always bad. And we hold to the narrowness of truth, right? I mean, you may have to ask some questions around that, but the narrowness of truth, and then the width and the broadness of grace. So the question isn't, is it too narrow, right? I think the question is it true? Which we should ask. And I know something like, well, I don't like you saying this because I'm offended. Okay, I understand. How many of you, you don't really like to talk to your doctor sometimes because they tell you the truth, right? Where you're like, I don't like what you're telling me, doctor. I am offended. And the doctor's like, well, okay, whatever, man, but I'm just telling you, if you keep eating, pie and food that ends in Edos, you're gonna have a situation, all right? Like here's, you can believe whatever you want. Here's reality, step on the scale. You're like, well, I don't believe in numbers, right? Like I feel like they are relative. Okay, fine, dude, whatever. I'm just telling you, we're getting a situation going on here, like where you can't even get your hands in your pant pockets without actually taking your pants off first. Like, that's a problem, right? I need you to think about the implications of that. And you're going, I think you're being too narrow. Okay, well, I think you're becoming a health risk and I'm trying to help. And just because you don't like the truth doesn't mean that it is not helpful and beneficial. So, And I think historically part of the problem with maybe our faith is one of proposition, right? Jesus did not impose, he proposed. Here's the good news. Will you come check it out? Not imposition. So I think it hurts when we impose, but it doesn't mean we don't have good reason for what we believe and solid evidence. And again, go grab the book, go watch the videos. We want you guys to be thinkers. When someone asks, we want you to feel confident that you have good reason for your faith. And when your kids are curious or whatever comes up, to be ready to give an answer with the gentleness and respect and hope. So go look that up. Again, go watch Pastor Drew's message if you would like online later next week. But I want to finish up with the question for the Compass Roanoke family as our family wraps up our time here. And I just want to say a few things to you in closing as we head out to encourage you and champion you on. And then I'm going to pray for you. And then I think that some of us will go have cupcakes if you went on that diet where the doctor has to tell you to watch it. All right, here it is. Final question I want for you. What is next for Compass Roanoke, for you and the Roanoke family? Let me say a couple of things that is next for this campus and for you guys. First, we, and I say we because I will be with you in spirit and watching online on Facebook as well and checking in. We continue, I pray, continue to be the most passionate and loving and fun and welcoming and living the way of Jesus people that we could possibly be, right? God has given me the opportunity to be part of this fantastic season of growth and impacting the community with Compass Roanoke. And it's only wasted if you don't carry it forward, right? I mean, we've gone from being in a school and just over 100 or so people and having to load up the trailer and tear down the trailer and set up every week to now being a major presence in the community and making an impact. We have such great people. Man, we really do. You guys are so much fun and you're so real and you let me be real and it's such a good culture, such a great team. You carry it on, right? You own it. You keep carrying it forward, as you already have. I just get up here and blah, blah, talk every weekend. You guys have made this a fantastic church culture. You keep owning it and carrying it forward. Let me say this as well, and let me push a little of some of you this morning. And again, if you get upset with me, well, I'm leaving, so whatever. You'll be mad. If you're not connected, and you're not serving in some capacity, we need you to do that. Right now is a really great time. Get into Rooted, join a group, sign up to serve, help with children's, help with students, help with First Impressions. Get involved. It is so critical to our effectiveness for the kingdom. Right? I just heard a guy say recently, and I love this image, that when you're not involved serving in your local church family, there is a U-shaped hole in that church community. There fully is. So I absolutely believe that all of us have inherent gifts, strengths, abilities from when you're born, right? You just have some natural gifts and talents. But when you give your life to Christ, I fully believe that the Spirit ignites that in a new way for you to use for kingdom work and kingdom purposes to advance the gospel. And when you're not doing that in this local expression of our church family, there's a U-shaped hole. Picture it like a jigsaw puzzle. How many of you like jigsaw puzzles? We love doing these. So we've got like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And for everyone not connected and serving, that piece is missing as we try to complete the puzzle. And I get annoyed when I don't have all the pieces and it drives me crazy. That's what happens when you're not plugged in. We don't complete the picture the way God would love for us to, and we're not as effective. So I would encourage you and ask you, get signed up. We have lots of spots. We need your help to be the best we can be. As well, you're going to have some really fantastic communicators coming in to fill the gap until they find the next campus pastor, because the bullpen at Compass is deep. And you know this. We have so many good communicators. You've seen Brandon, Rory, Nathan will be up here teaching. We have so many great guys. You won't skip a beat, right? You won't forget me soon because we have great communicators. But let me do encourage you with this. Whenever I was in Bible college at Ozark Christian College. So we had chapel services on Tuesday and Thursday. Twice a week, you would have to go in for a church service on those mornings. And I remember one specific Thursday. So we're in class, because we had a couple classes prior to chapel. In class, we're about to pray for the speaker that day and then pray for some other things because, Bible college, you get to pray before you start class. So we're about to pray for the day and pray for the speaker. And one of the students in that class, he raises his hand and he asks the professor, who is preaching at chapel today? Because Bible college students would ask that question to determine whether or not they wanted to go to chapel on that day, which I know you thought it was just you. It's not just you. We did that stuff too, right? So raise his hand, right? Who will be preaching in chapel today, professor? And Mark Scott was the professor in that class. He looks right back at him and he said, God will be preaching in chapel today. Whoever he chooses to use as his mouthpiece really doesn't matter, right? Like boom, burn. That dude never raised his hand again all semester. And here, man, I've been here 6+ years now. We have spent so much time praying and inviting the Holy Spirit to come and move and be in this place. He's going to honor that, whoever is up here. He's going to honor that. So I want to encourage you, get here and cheer whoever God uses as his mouthpiece on that day. And then be praying for and encouraging when you find out who a new guy is going to be. Text that dude, email him, show support. You'll create fertile soil and a lot of fun for a new season because God's got this. God is not surprised by this moment. He's got you and he's got our family, and it's going to be a fun new season. I'm so excited to see what he will do. And then finally, final story. The things I love to do most is talk about Jesus, teach you about the Bible, and then just tell fantastic kingdom stories. And I was reminded recently of one of my favorite Tony Campolo stories. And if you know Campolo, great teacher, like back in the 80s, really just dynamic guy. And he tells the story that we'll close with about one time going to Honolulu to preach, like suffering for the cause. I'm gonna have to go to Hawaii. I'm waiting for that call. Haven't got that one yet. So he goes to Honolulu. He's an East Coast guy, so he's like on the 6 hours or so time difference over there. So he talked about how he would wake up in the middle of the night, like 2, 3 in the morning, and be hungry, and then go and look for something to eat. And so one night he's walking around, said, really hard to find places that are open at 3 in the morning in Honolulu, but he spotted this little diner on a side street that happened to be open, had the little neon sign, whatever, it was open. So he goes and he pops in to this little diner, and it is a small little diner, no tables, no booths, just some stools that are around the counter and maybe some on the wall where you come in. So he goes into this little diner, takes a seat, and he says he wouldn't even touch or open up the greasy, nasty looking menu because he was afraid that something creepy might come running out of there. So he's like, he just sits there so that whenever this large, unshaven guy smoking a cigar comes walking out of the back in the kitchen and asks him what it is he wants, he says, I'll just take some coffee and a donut, right? That's all he does. So Campolo is sitting in this little diner, sipping his coffee, eating his donut, when all of a sudden the door opens and 8 or 9 of these women that have been working the streets, right, come walking in. These prostitutes come into the diner, again, small diner, and so he's kind of in the middle, and they just kind of all sit around him, and they continue their conversation, talking like he's not even there. So Campolo says, he's like, all right, that got awkward. He was gonna try to just subtly slip out the door and pay his bill and just go ahead and leave. But as he's waiting, he hears the girl on his right, who's very animated, say, tomorrow is my birthday. And then another girl on another side comes back, one of her friends says, oh, really? So do you want me to sing happy birthday for you? How about I get you a clown and a cake because it's your birthday? So the first girl's like, all right, listen, you don't have to be mean, right? I'm just saying, I've never even really had a celebration, never had made a big deal for my birthday. Of course, I don't expect it now, whatever. And the conversation goes on. Well, Campolo says that's all they needed, man. Like that conversation right there. So he stays, right? Instead of slipping out, he just mingles and hangs out until they go back out, finish their break. And then he asks his cigar smoking owner, Harry's his name. He asked Harry, do these girls come in here every night? And Harry's like, you mean the prostitutes? He's like, yeah, pretty much every night they show up around this time. So then he asks, okay, then the girl that was on my right side. Harry says, that was Agnes. So Campolo says, all right, well, Agnes is having a birthday tomorrow. So what do you say we decorate your diner before she comes, and then when they show up, we have a birthday party for her? What do you think about that? And Harry looks back at him, big guy looks at him, he's like, really? That's brilliant. I think it's great. Let's do it. So then Harry calls to his wife who's in the back in the kitchen. He's like, hey, Jan, right? Her name's Jan. Jan, come here. Like, you've got to come check this out. Come and meet this guy. He wants to throw a party for Agnes. And so Jan comes running out from back in the kitchen, a little lady. She goes right up and she grabs Campolo's hand, squeezes his hand and says, listen, mister, you probably would not understand this. And it probably won't even make sense to you considering her occupation. But Agnes is one of the good people. She really is one of the kind-hearted people in this town. And no one ever does anything for her. And what you're doing is a really good thing. How can we help you? So Campolo's like, all right, awesome. Can we decorate your diner before she comes in tomorrow? And she's like, yep, whatever you want to do, all good. It's like, sweet, we'll decorate. I'll bring a cake. It'll be fun. Then, of course, Harry jumps back in. He's like, no, cakes are my thing. I'll have the cake ready. That's the plan. So that's what they're going to do. So next morning, late in the evening, like 2:30 or so in the morning, Campolo ventures out again. He's got the supplies, right? He goes to the diner, puts up streamers, puts out party favors, decorates it, makes it festive, the little horns, all those things, has like a big poster board, which they get out markers and they decorate it and they make it all glittery and cool. Happy birthday, Agnes, and they stick it in behind the counter, right there by the register. And then they wait. Everything is set. Everything is festive. Because Jan, they've been in the community for years. Maybe they've grown up in the community. They know people. She's gotten the word out on the streets about the party. So come like 3:15, 3:20, the diner is packed with prostitutes. So Campolo says, come party time. It is wall to wall prostitutes and me, right? Like that's what they've got. So like 3:30-ish, like right on the time, Agnes and her friends come walking in. Everything is set as they come walking through the door and everyone shouts, surprise, right? Happy birthday, Agnes. And like people are cheering and they're blowing whistles and they're doing all the things. And Agnes is shocked, right? Completely shocked, completely stunned. She like starts shaking, like her legs are knocking, like she can't get control. So they walk her over to a stool and set her down. And everyone in the diner fires up singing, happy birthday, right? Happy birthday, dear Agnes. Happy birthday to you. And then here they come. Out comes the cake. They walk out the cake with the candles for Agnes. And she just starts crying, right? Like just sobbing uncontrollably. And so it's Harry. It's big Harry. He's got the cake. He's like, all right, Agnes, knock it off. I'm going to need you to blow out the candles. Come on, sweetheart. You can do this. And she tries, right? She's like, but she's so overwhelmed. And she's just so broken that like she can't get her breath and she can't do it. So Harry blows out the candles for her. And then he sets the cake down in front of her and hands her a knife to cut her birthday cake. And she just looks at the cake for a moment, just sits there in silence. Then she looks up at all the people and she says, do you think it would be okay? Do you think it would be cool if I don't cut my cake just yet? Like, do you think it would be all right if I take it home and I show my mother, right? Like, do you think I could do that? So Campolo says, your birthday, Agnes, whatever you want to do. And so she stands up to leave. He's like, oh, like you mean now, right? Like you got to go now. And she's like, yes, I only live a couple doors down from here and I just want to run over there. Like, I just want to run there real quick and I want my mom to see my cake. And I promise I'll bring it right back. He's like, all right, again, your party, whatever. So she gets up, grabs her cake in her arms like it's a newborn baby, like takes it real close, presses it to her chest, stands up off the stool, turns, pushes through the crowd of people to the door, gets out to the entrance, swings the door open, steps out in the streets, door comes back closed. Everyone else is still standing in the diner in like shocked silence, right? It's just really awkward now because Agnes and her cake are gone. So you've got the diner full of prostitutes and Campolo sitting there. So like, and if you know Campolo, like only he could, he says, hey, how about we pray, right? Which, how surreal is that moment? So you've got the pastor conducting the prayer meeting with a bunch of prostitutes at 3 a.m. in a diner. That's what you get, right? So he does. He just starts praying for Agnes. He starts praying for all the girls and praying over the diner, just whatever he did. He prays for them. He wraps up his prayer. And of course, then, they kind of start to mingle and the conversation just kind of picks up and breaks off. And as they do that, Harry leans over the counter to Campolo and he's like, bro, he's like, you didn't tell me you were a pastor. He's like, well, you didn't ask me, right? You never asked. And so then Harry looks at him like, really? He said, okay. He's like, well, tell me, what kind of church is it that you belong to? Because maybe I'm interested in that church. And Campolo said, he thought about it in one of those moments where God gave him just the right words to say in that scenario. He looked right back at Harry and said, I belong to a church that throws birthday parties for prostitutes at 3 a.m. Yeah. This is the kind of church God calls us and creates us to be. Here's my prayer for you, that you would always love Jesus unapologetically, and that you would love his mission recklessly and relentlessly, that you would continue to grow, right? Just through personal disciplines, grow like Christ, to become more like him so that he would more powerfully through you. Your marriage, your job, your family, your neighborhood, and beyond that, to maybe prostitutes in a diner at 3 a.m. Who knows? My goal is he would use us and you'd have that kind of zeal and that kind of open-mindedness and hope and heart for people that need it the most. So I'm gonna pray for you because our time is way up and we're gonna get out of here and you're gonna continue to be the great church that God's called you to be, and you're gonna continue to lean in, that Jesus brings celebration and hope and healing for those that have no reason to celebrate, and we want you to keep doing that. And in those moments that maybe it's you, we want others to step in and be that for you. And if you've never given your life to Christ and you've never been baptized, and this series has been compelling or opened your eyes or encouraged you, you could do that. We've already had 2 baptisms through this weekend. We would love to baptize some more. You just come find us and let us know. We will make that happen. But let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, you're such a good dad. You're such a good God. And we thank you for the way you love us. You called not just for our hearts, but for our minds, to know that we can have a confidence that we're not believing in some random fairy tale and myth, but in a Savior, in a person, in an event, and a promise that is eternal. And then I pray for us to be the church that loves you and that loves people and lives this out practically. And that you would give us simple stories and crazy stories and breakthrough stories and hope-filled stories. When we fall, we get back up. And when we're strong, we lead the charge, and together we keep making a difference for the kingdom until we celebrate again in eternity. God, we love you. We pray these things in your son's name.